This is LizJSimpson. Welcome to the Women Consulting Corporate Podcast. In today's episode, I really want to dive into my own personal story of what I felt like I've needed on my own journey of consulting corporate clients and building a business, and how the business I've built really is a business that's providing to others what I wish I had for myself 10 plus years ago. And I hope this story resonates with you all, because I think so many of us have aspirations to create with what younger versions of ourselves needed. And I think that for so many of us, that's our driving force, is like we're trying to prove something to a younger version of ourselves. We're trying to create a safe space for a younger version of ourselves, or pride for a younger version of ourselves. And so I just kind of want to peel back the layers and speak to how what I've built is really a ministry, so that Liz many years ago can be proud of Liz 20 years from now. You know, through my movement, our movement is focused on empowering women entrepreneurs to secure 5, 6, 7 figure corporate contracts. And I'm like, where do I start in this story? People keep asking me, like, how did you get here? I'm like, it's so complex, right? Like, there's so many pivotal moments that have happened along the way. I mean, I think one of the, like, just most traumatic situations in my life was my domestic violence story. And so that really is when there was a pattern disrupt in my identity. If for those of you who don't know, as a sophomore in college, I went to Purdue University. I had an academic scholarship to Purdue University, and I found myself in an unhealthy relationship, and I found myself living in a battered women's shelter for 9 months as a single mother. I had to live off of the map for my safety and my daughter's safety. And just the trauma from that situation was like hell on earth for me. And there's just so many layers to this story, and the battle that I had for years for my own safety, for my daughter's safety, and protecting her. And out of survival, I made decisions where I felt isolated from those that I loved most. And also, that situation brought so much shame. You know, when you talk about domestic violence, so many women actually shame themselves for the choices that they made to find themselves in unhealthy relationships. So that was a pivotal time in my life where I started to resent myself, and I started to shame myself, and I wasn't proud of who I was, and I was kind of like I guess like a Medusa. Like everything I looked at turned into stone. Like I just was like so angry at the world for my situation. But the blessing in that time was my daughter, and having this little brown baby that I wanted to create everything for. Like everything I wish I had, I wanted her to have. And I wanted to be a woman that she could be proud of. And I wanted to make a difference for her. And the injustices that I felt, I never wanted her to face. And so living in a domestic violence, going from like this identity of like, I'm someone who just a lot of people hailed for my intellect, for my ability to perform on tests. And to go from someone who's hailed as a very intelligent person with a bright future to now being a single mother on welfare, it was humbling, because it showed me that how people treat you is based off of your net worth. That was the narrative I pulled from that. So I saw how people treated me when they thought I had a bright future, and I saw how people treated me when they thought I was worthless. And I went from being someone exposed to certain networks because of my academic path. And then I now was on welfare and had like entry-level jobs for a season. the college degree that I held, and I still have to do a lot of work on the fact I don't have a college degree to this day, which I thought I grew up. You have to understand when you're on the academic path, you think your value comes from a diploma. So then I became someone who knew at that time I wasn't going to have a diploma. And it was, how do I change the trajectory of my life? How do I go from being the statistic of welfare? And I mean, when I say like, there's a depth for anyone who's been in poverty. It is a fucking disease. I get so angry at society because this is totally a sidebar. We like shame crime and violence and all of these things, but we don't inspect the disease at the heart of them all. If you've never had someone to provide for and had nothing to your name, don't act like you understand those things, right? And so being in poverty with a child, the things that I would consider sometimes to provide for my child, it's like sometimes I literally can't even relate to the state of mind that I was in at that time. And so, I remember, times like needing to take a bus to work and get my daughter to daycare, and I'm like digging change out my couch, like to figure out how I'm going to get the bus fare. And so it was just a really challenging time. And it's also a time that I am so grateful for. When I look at my map of the world, I am a young Black woman who grew up in a community of very proud African Americans. I've known my history. I know we're the third generation out of slavery, but we also were the first family, Black family, that lived in the community that we lived in. So I also was a young Black girl who lived in a predominantly white neighborhood. I'm someone who's gone to a Big Ten university, a white institution, predominantly white institution. I've also been the girl who's dated drug dealers, and I've been the girl who's been on poverty. I've lived in battered women's shelters. I have been at tables with executives. Like, I've been in so many different environments. What it helps is it helps you to adapt, and it also helps to demystify the fact that people are so uniquely different. Like, you start to see like people have these commonalities, right? And so I'm thankful for my experiences because I've been in and out of so many different environments that it's helped me to adapt, right? And to relate to people. And so at that time, when I was looking for a way, sales became my saving grace. Like, I am very vocal and visible about my love for sales because as someone who was looking for a way to survive and do it in healthy, productive ways, sales was everything, because sales was a way that if I performed, my performance could dictate my income. And I was like, yo, this is my way out. Like, listen, you bring me in, yeah, give me commission. Listen, just don't give me a ceiling. Like, and I just became like my hustle, my energy, like everything was like, I'm going to be the best at sales, and I'm going to change the trajectory of my life through sales performance. And what was interesting is that, the challenges with that were, as a young Black woman in sales, is that when you look at sales at that time, I was in environments where I was often the only. And you're trying to influence individuals with a different map of the world, different age, different socioeconomic background. And oftentimes in sales, when you're looking at closing like larger deals with high net worth individuals or individuals of a certain title and caliber, there has to be commonalities, which means like you have to put yourself in the shoes of your buyer so that you can have high value conversations with them. And so there were so many times that, one, how that helped is that there was a period of time where I was really like educating myself on, like, for instance, there was a time I was working with like real estate investment trust and commercial real estate investors. And so then I had to make sure I understood the different asset classes of real estate, and I was well versed so that I could speak to, individuals with high net worth. Or insurance. I was in the insurance space. I worked at places like Humana, United Healthcare. So then I had to understand everything about that. And so it grew my acumen, but it also was frustrating at times because it just felt like I didn't always feel like I belonged. I can't really ever say I ever felt like I belonged in my corporate career. I felt like I just became masterful at understanding who people needed me to be. And I learned that a lot of sales was like mastery of communication and flexibility. But it always frustrated me that when I would go to conferences or associations or events, it never felt like a homecoming for me. It always felt performative. Like, okay, thanks for this band. This, like, let me know when I can go home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't feel like those spaces were curated for me. But I'm very competitive. And like I said, I was a single mother. So if you put me in the game, I'm going to put points on the board. But I couldn't help feeling like this doesn't feel fulfilling. So around my 30th birthday, or on my 30th birthday, fast forward now, I'm married. We're a blended family. We are a 6-figure household. And so much that I had prayed for as a single mother in a battered women's shelter I was living. But my 30th birthday, one of my friends, Diane, called me. And Diane knew me soon after I got out of shelter. And she knew my struggles and she knew my story. And she knew like gritty Liz, like Liz who was just like my lifestyle, my existence didn't reflect what I wanted. And so she heard a lot of my dreams. And so on my 30th birthday, she calls me. She was in Chicago. I was living in Texas at this time. And she said, Liz, I'm so proud of you. Everything that you said you wanted by your 30th birthday, you have it. And she meant it as a compliment. And I started weeping and I went into a dark, deep depression for a few weeks because I thought, is this what I've been praying for? Like, it's something about her giving me that compliment triggered the fact that I am so freaking miserable. Like, if this is the destination, like, this does not feel how I thought it would feel. And so at that time, what I realized, like, is that I had spent those past, I think at that time it had been like a decade between me being in a battered women's shelter to me like acquiescing in my career and things of that nature. And what I realized is that I had spent 10 years chasing the appearance of success for the approval of the people who I thought had turned their backs on me during my lowest point. And I realized that their validation was not enough for a fulfilled life. And I was actually going to have to face what I wanted. And so that became shortly after my time of leaving corporate. But many don't know is that I didn't leave corporate to consult or to do sales. I actually left corporate America to run as far away from business as possible. And actually, what I built when I immediately left corporate is I wrote a book called The Puzzle Pieces of Me. It was all about self-discovery and healing. I told the story for the first time publicly about my journey of being a domestic violence victim. And I built a global domestic violence awareness movement. It was called He Hit Me. We had psychiatrists, psychologists, Nobel Prize winners. And initially, when I left corporate, I coached trauma survivors of abuse. Because my goal was, for once, to tell my story publicly, to normalize it, to shed the shame, and to help other women. Writing my book was so healing for me. And I would have women that I would coach on these calls. And I had stories of women who were VPs in corporate who, when they would misbehave, their husband would chain them in the basement for misbehavior. I had women who were dealing with partners who were sexually abusing their children. The darkest stories, the horror stories, were the stories of the women I was coaching. And what I saw, which is what reminded me of being in a battered women's shelter, is the masks they wore were so convincing that they looked like you and me. And what I realized is that humans are full of shit. And the masks we wear don't at all reveal what we're going through or what we've been through. And so I was coaching these women, and I thought I was a pretty dang good coach. And what would happen is I was coaching these women to really like healing and thriving through their abuse. But each time what would happen, and it's very like, for those of you who know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's like a contrite, everyone quotes it, but it was like, I saw it day in and day out. So I would coach these women, like it's like, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like, once your need for food and shelter are met, and then you have a different need, you have a different focus. So it's like, as you achieve certain things in life, and as you have certain things in life, your needs change. So what was happening is that, these women were survivors, so they had like their basic needs and essentials, but at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. Right. And so what would happen is I was teaching these women like self-love and things like that. And they would find this place of like self-love and peace. But then they would have desires for business, or they had desires to increase their bank account. And that was interesting to me because I remembered that for myself. Like it was like, yes, I believe I'm a whole woman and I believe I'm a queen, but I'm gonna need this environment to reflect this. Like, in no shade, but like when you feel like you're a whole woman, you're like, so I think I'm done with welfare now. Like, I'm gonna need this house to reflect the royalty that I feel like I am. And so it's like, once you achieve certain needs, you're looking for more, like your environment, or to give back and build business. And for me, my whole journey has been like, the woman I want to serve, what does she really need? And how do I be of complete service? Like, I had a friend who was like, be careful with the word you use. I'm still trying to find the phrase, but what's really in my spirit is like, use me, Lord. Like, I need there to be a message from my mess. Like, I need my life's legacy to be like the darkest times that I've been through have somehow transformed other lives. Like, that to me is the meaning that I need. So however I can be used, whatever work I have to do, whatever discomfort I have to go through, whatever lessons I have to learn, whatever education I have to achieve, if it means that I can be the vessel to be the hard things to make it so other people don't have to go through hard shit, like, that's my life commitment. Like, use me, Lord. Like, whatever it is, I'm strong. I'm ready. I got you. And so that's a scary prayer to pray, because God will be like, all right, like, you sure? I'm gonna give you all the hard shit then. And so for me, when I realized, okay, like, what you're doing isn't enough. Like, you're teaching them self-love and self-actualization, like, and I realized then, like, I was kind of low-key sales coaching them sometimes, right? Because they talk to me about business and they focus on things. I'm like, we'll do this, this, and this. And so I realized that the thing that I'd been running from was actually the answer that they needed. And so that's when I like slowly started getting into like business consulting, sales consulting again. And then once I slowly dipped my toe in the water of sales consulting, I took a little action and a lot of grace showed up. Like, I built relationships where I was getting like major sales consulting projects. And I was building sales playbooks. I was doing sales training. I was doing sales workshops. I was getting sales speaking engagements. It's like the moment my obedience showed up, certain opportunities started showing up. And then life happened again, and I found out I was pregnant with my baby Legacy. So I'd had like a little bit of traction, and then I was pregnant. And this pregnancy took me out. So I was on bed rest about the whole pregnancy, which meant, it's like 6 months of a standstill, in your business. So like doing all of this work to build a business and then like checking out. And candidly, in the 6 months I was on bed rest, I wasn't even mourning the business. I was so happy to be pregnant. Like I was so happy. It was my first child. It was my husband. And I just was like, I was for real barefoot and pregnant. Like all I cared about is when I'm eating the next popsicle. Like I was not worried about nobody's business, right? Like at the time I was like, just feed me and rub my belly. That's all I cared about. But after I had Legacy, I looked again and I felt like so much of what I had built was lost, which is why another reason why a big part of what I focus on in teaching is sustainable businesses, because I know what it's like to build something and then life happen, even something you want in life to happen, and you lose everything you built. And so then I had an opportunity where I was consulting a consulting firm. And I was doing sales consulting, and it was a great lesson in working for the sales consulting firm is that I'd known how to sell, right? I've been doing, in my background, I've done call center sales, I've done telesales, I've managed retail territories, I've done outpatient medical sales, I've sold to physicians and pharmacists, I've done field sales, or I've done Medicare, Advantage plan sales, like you name it, I've sold it, right? So I had a lot of sales experience. I had never really done like selling consulting services. And if you've been in sales, you have to realize that's a whole different ballgame. It's actually considered rainmaking. And very few people have this skill set because typically the only people who would need to rainmake are principals and managing directors of major consulting firms. So it's not a skill set that's taught to your average typical salesperson, because your average typical salesperson is not selling law firm services to a corporation. Normally, only the principal of a law firm is doing that, and normally they only get that education. So even in the ecosystem of sales, most salespeople have not sold major consulting deals, right? So like not all sales is created equal. So it was a privilege for me because through a relationship, I was brought in. And this woman, for about 20 years, had been the only principal person selling her major consulting deals. She was an authority in her industry, books, industry knew her. She was a household name. And her belief at the time was that I am the authority, I'm the face, so no one else would be able to sell these complex deals, right? I've just had my baby. I'm eager. I'm like Les Brown says, I'm hungry. I've been out the market for a minute. Like mama is hungry. Like put me in the game, right? And when I'm a competitor, so you tell me something's hard to do, I'm like, let me be the one to do it, right? So because it was a risk and because I was hungry, I agreed to a pure commission play. I'm like 10% commission. Her average deal size typically was $50,000. I'm like, cool, put me in the game. What are the numbers? I'll close the deals. So what I did is like, I shadowed everything this woman did. Like I scoured every contract she ever did, every conversation she had with buyers I was on. When she went to conferences, I went with her. I went through her notes. Like I studied everything that she was doing. And then little by little, I would get in the game, right? So like, then it'd be like, all right, I built my own relationship and then I'd have discovery. But then when I didn't know proposals well, she would jump in, we'd do proposal together. It was like step by step, learning a skill set that very few professionals ever learn, right? Because very few are doing it at that level. In 6 months' time, I had closed record-breaking deals in the 20-year history of this company. So I'm like coming in and I'm closing major deals, making a lot of money, right? So I'm like, oh, I got this. And it's interesting because now this is something you thought nobody could do. I'm not the expert. And matter of fact, I'm going to be careful on how much I share. But I was selling services to people who didn't look like me. And I was in spaces where I was like the only, right? Like there's a reason why there's not a lot of people in this space. So I'm doing that. And there's a few experiences I'm having. One, I have tremendous imposter syndrome because I can look around and see people don't look like me. And I had a notion in my mind that they felt a certain way, but you're not sure, right? Because especially as a Black woman in America, people are telling you you're paranoid and you see a racism where racism doesn't exist, right? And then I had one of my experiences was we had one of our largest deals. Now, candidly, and many businesses do this, like even in my own team, sometimes I can do this. As a leader of a business, you can have an opinion, but you want there to be a transfer of trust. So you have your team be the voice of your thoughts, right? So there was one of this largest deals that was happening, and, I'm having conversations with the CEO of the firm for all the deals. Like, we're strategizing together, but I'm the salesperson, so I'm having the conversations with the prospects. And for this particular deal, we were being very aggressive in expanding the deal. So we have a call, the buyer's feeling a little bit of the aggression or what have you. And so I'm concerned that we're pushing him too far. So I'm like, all right, talk to the CEO. I'm like, yo, can you talk to this buyer? Make sure this deal is still in a good space. And so because we were close, she was like, yes, I'm going to have you on the line on mute because I want you to hear everything he says so we can negotiate on it. But I'll keep you private and I'll be on the call so that he feels like, he could talk to me. So she has this older white male buyer with $1 billion net worth on the call. And to this day, unless he listens, he won't know I was on mute. And I heard him validate all my fears. And I heard him firsthand talk about how and why I didn't belong at the tables that I was being at and in the rooms. And my imposter syndrome is flaring beyond belief. And I'm waiting to be defended. And I'm listening to the woman who I've made millions for in a short amount of time not say shit to defend me. And I got real small. I got real small. It was one point that became I don't like it here. I don't like it here. I'm not getting credit. I'm literally the brains behind a lot of these strategies and these deals. And you're silently listening to someone talk about me and you're taking credit for stuff. That was a difficult call. And then some other things happened, I was 10% commission, which probably felt very advantageous to her in the beginning, but probably didn't think this young Black girl was making as much money as they would. So all of a sudden, comp plans keep getting renegotiated. Now there's ceilings. Now there's new terms and conditions. Every few months, there's a new rule, right? And then it became how do we renegotiate the contract? I was the only person, Black woman on this team. There were some changes to someone else on the team. I'm the newest person on the team. I'm getting a lot of attention of the CEO, a lot of time because I'm making them a lot of money, right? Next thing I know, somehow it must come out that I'm making as much money as I'm making. And then all of a sudden I realized relationships are different, right? People are treating you different. It's all right to have the young Black girl and she's commission only, but now she's making money. Now she's getting power. Now people are paying attention to her. Put her in her place, right? Is how it felt. So I've learned very quickly how when I'm palatable, people are comfortable. And when I'm powerful, people show their true colors. And that's something I learned. I paid attention to it. I also learned in deals, there's so many things I learned in experiences, deals that I thought were going dry and I would stay hungry and I would stay on those deals. And then, deals that I thought went dry 6 months later close as multi-six-figure deals. So it taught me stay hungry, stay top of mind, build relationships. I've also my largest deals, closing those consulting deals. I've worked with legal teams where you send them a contract and you get back a red line contract where it's just red lines all through a document. And realizing that it could take, months to close deals from redlining. I've made mistakes. I've learned to be humble. There was times where I was closing a lot of deals and I would like let my chest puff up a little bit in conversations, and I've been put into my place. Listen, and I'm not going to say it's a race thing, but I mean, there's dynamics at play, being who I've been in certain rooms. And so people can be very comfortable putting you in your place. And so I don't like rejection. So I've learned how to communicate and move in a way so that like I stay humble and I always stay inquisitive and curious, because the moment you think you've got it all figured out is the moment you'll mess up. So I'm always like humble and inquisitive and asking questions. And when you've been at tables where people have been very harsh and how they put you in your place, you're like, how do I navigate around that? So that's been a lesson from my sales experience. Just so many lessons from that. And I think that it's not just the failures, which I've had so many. I've closed so many deals, but I've lost so many, right? But that's the thing you understand about sales. You understand, even if you only have a 30% close conversion, if the close conversion is going to be 30%, how many more at-bats can you have? So 30% means more deals and 30% means larger deals, right? And so that's just been a part of my experience that I navigated. And I realized that I was very privileged to have the experiences that I've had, and to be in the rooms that I've had, and to have had the mentors that I've had. And so fast forward, I've had this experience, I've closed these deals, and women were kind of seeing the moves that I was making, and, it'd be like, oh, we're having a women's empowerment workshop. Liz, can you come do a workshop? And because I had a book about self-discovery, people would want me to talk about self-discovery. And I was just over that topic. I was over it. I was tired of the fluff. I was like, I'm at tables closing multiple six-figure deals. I don't want to talk about self-awareness. Let me tell you how to run the play. That's what I want to talk about. Make some money and then figure out self-discovery. Or you will have to go through self-discovery to get to making the money. And money, unfortunately, is a motivator for so many adults. So it's let me show you the play. The truth of the matter is, to get to the money, you're going to have to face yourself. You know what I mean? And so that's the play that I started teaching. And so I realized that so few in my community had been given that knowledge. And then I just started hearing about statistics, right? How for Black households, we had zero net worth, right? And it was going to be negative over a period of years. Or, women average 67% less revenue than men. And you got to understand, so I'm in this environment where I'm seeing how deals are closed and the amount of deals closed. And I'm reading statistics about how we're not getting money and we're not closing deals and our businesses are struggling. And I'm seeing new experts pop out every second on social media, but no one's speaking the language of the world that I know. No one's talking about consulting. Nobody's talking about the billions of dollars that corporations are spending. And it's real recognize real. I'm everyone seems unfamiliar right now. Nobody's talking about what I know for sure makes money. And candidly, it was scary as hell to start talking about it. It was scary. It was it's a decision of I want to help women, but am I going to put myself out there and talk about my experiences and what I've seen? And candidly, I really didn't want to talk about the pain of my experiences. I just wanted to give people all the fruit. A lot of the pain and struggle, and the failures, here are the lessons, here's the best part, here's the best practices, of all the things I've been through. If you follow and navigate these steps, this is how you can win. And this is how you could sidestep all the struggles that I've had. And that's really where in 2020, what the big money movement was birthed upon. I knew I needed something holistic because I've known firsthand that to be in the rooms that I found myself in, to successfully close the deals that I was able to close, I was constantly having to work on myself. Like it was, and it's funny because I literally remember when I became an executive, Googling like becoming an executive. Like I was like, where is the executive education? Like I'm now an executive, who should coach me? Like when I tell y'all, like if y'all knew the seriousness, like I don't know if y'all know this, but like for executives, there's literally like health assessments for executives. Because when you step into leading like a corporation, there's like a whole nother level of tests and like health assessments they'll do. So I was like, okay, I'm now an executive. I have to stay healthy, right? So I'm like, all right, now I need all the health tests and what should my diet and wellness look like? Like it's interesting because as a competitor, it was like, how do I be the best intellectual athlete? I don't know how to say it. It's like, I'm not playing the sport of track. I'm playing the sport of trying to be the smartest, sharpest businesswoman. And so when I started consulting and, when I was an executive for this consulting firm, it was like, how do I play the best game of being a thought leader and being sharp at business? And so, like my first year of entrepreneurship, I tracked it. I read like 102 books. And then I was like, I like this. So, I'm the person, I'm reading 4 or 5 books a week. I'm consuming information. I'm shaping time for reading. I was really concerned about my health. I was like, where do I go? Like, where do the best thinkers go? How do they stay the best thinkers? Where does thought leadership come from? How is it that when they show up in a room, they have a power and presence that makes other people to pay attention? Like, I was obsessed with that. Like, I have one of my mentors. It was interesting because I was in a program, and normally people are looking at testimonials. And she said, you should build your program. Like, think about what is the best testimonial you could have, and then build your program around that. And so I did a lot of self-introspection and things like that. And I thought about the best compliment anyone could give me is that I met Liz and she changed my life because she completely changed how I think. And I will never think at that level again. Like, to me, that's the greatest compliment. And it's not like I want to teach people how to fish. And the only way to teach someone how to fish is to change how they think. I want, yeah, you'll be in my program for a few months and you're going to get bank. But 20 years from now, you're going to be like, you changed the trajectory of my net worth because my thinking sustained me for life. I knew how to make new decisions. I knew how to problem solve differently. I was confident going into spaces. I created spaces. I approached conversations differently, my relationships differently. And so for me to lead with that, I have to be that, right? I have to think differently. I have to move differently. I have to strategize differently. And so that's really been my focus and the movement. And the beauty is whether someone comes and interacts with our brand and they become an entrepreneur or not, here's the thing about entrepreneurship that I love, that I don't talk about a lot. I don't know if entrepreneurship will be forever for me or anyone else. What I can guarantee you, though, is that the moves I've made in the past 7 years of an entrepreneur have changed the position I would ever be if I went back to corporate. I have quantum leaped my own personal growth and position. So if I ever decided to go back to corporate, I would be in an exponentially greater position because of what I've done for myself. There's a quote and it says, the best education a man can get is the one that he gives himself. And so for me, the entrepreneurial journey has been about giving myself the best education. So whether you decide to consult and you plan on being an entrepreneur for life and changing your net worth, if someone comes through our program, we're going to help them with that. But even if they decide to come through our program and then go back to corporate, the position you'll be in and the value you'll be able to add will be so unique that it'll be your own promotion because you'll see business differently and you'll think differently. So I don't know. I guess this is about me building a community where I felt celebrated for exactly who I was, the winding road of a path that I've been on, that I could be embraced for that I could look at other women and we could find commonality in our experiences, our struggles, understand that our masks are just what we show to the outside world, but like holding space for the duality of you could have dark life experiences and you could also be one of the sharpest minds. Like I think society struggles. We are in a society of, we struggle with several narratives living at once. I talk about this in my book. Like, it's like I think someone got in trouble because they were talking about like Martin Luther King Jr. And they're like, can there be the duality of someone was one of the most influential people and maybe there were decisions in his life that are things that we shouldn't praise? Like, can that duality live? Do we have to either villainize someone or put them on a pedestal? And I think it's very dangerous in society that we either want saviors or we want like demons. It's like you're either evil or good. And the truth of the matter is that people are complex. And I wanted a safe space where women could show up with all their complexities. Because the beauty is when you can face all of you, you become invincible. Like, I'm not afraid to go in any room because I know who I am. Like, the worst that you could say to me is like, what could you say to me if I know who I am? Like, I'm self-aware. There's nothing you could say that could dissuade me or cause me to question my worth. So I wanted a space for that. And that's what we created. I wanted a space where I could normalize like nerding out about wanting to be the best in business. Like, that's why I'm like, I am not for microwave popcorn, wannabe entrepreneurs. Like, we are the space like where giants go. Like, we want to be the best. Like, we want to be the brightest minds. And I want to normalize that for them. So that's the space we created. I wanted a space where we could come and say, yo, I had this conversation. I got knocked all the way out the game. Like, my feelings are hurt. I'm going to be good, but like, I need a space to say like, yo, I know there's some strategies I could do, but first hold space for my feelings are hurt. I feel rejected. And so all of the things, I guess, that I went through, that I struggled with and I felt isolated, I wanted to create a space where others could belong and they could get better. And I'm very proud to say that's what we've created. It is my life's work. If you'd like more behind the scenes of corporate conversations like these and just real conversations where we can talk about why we're doing the things that we're doing in life, if you don't know the reason, make sure you find out. You can make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, or you can follow us on all of your favorite streaming podcast platforms. This is LizJSimpson. I'm wishing you inside out success that doesn't just look good, but that feels good from the inside out, and that offers you true fulfillment, because to me, there is no such success without it. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.